Hello everyone, Andy Sturwich here from Altero, coming to you live again from Microsoft Ignite in sunny Orlando, Florida. So I'm here with Taylor Brown, and if you watched our feed last year, this guy probably looks a little familiar. How's it going, Taylor?
Pretty good. How about you?
Good, good. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time to come and talk to us again this year.
Yeah.
It was a great video last year, just kind of learning about containers and what was new and how people can use them and what they can do for them. So I was really looking forward to talking to you again this year about more of the same. So I think what I'd like to start with is, why don't you tell people a little bit more about yourself and what you do for Microsoft?
Yeah, so Taylor Brown. I've been at Microsoft for almost 15 years full-time, like a couple years of contracting before that. And all of that has been on Hyper-V, or virtualization. So for the last couple years, I've been focused predominantly on containers. Still do a little work with Hyper-V and virtual machines, but my main area has been with containers.
Nice. That's a really exciting upcoming technology. I mean, sure, it's been around in the open source world for a while, right? But I feel like Microsoft's really bringing it to, the mainstream, So it's really interesting to see not only Microsoft's embracement, I'm not even sure that's a word, but embracement of open source, but like I said, bringing containers to the mainstream. And that's really what you guys have been focusing on, right?
Yeah, so we started working on containers. We had a couple business problems to solve. So we needed a way to run workloads in Azure more efficiently. But we were also starting to see people talking about this Docker stuff and kind of what is that and how are we going to work with it. And at the same time, we started working more in open source. So as we built it out, we realized there was a really good opportunity to go partner with the open source Docker community and build a solution that meant customers could have the same management for Linux workloads that they would have for Windows workloads. And that strategy has really proven out to be successful. So now people are running mixed Windows and Linux workloads. They're managing things in exactly the same way across both. It's become a really, really powerful tool. And then all these open source projects around it, Kubernetes and these sort of things have come around and built on top of that open source support that we had. And so we're just seeing more and more of that start to come to pass. Last week or 2 weeks ago, Drone.io announced support for Windows Server. Really based on the fact that we had all this open source work, they were able to layer in their technology right on top of Windows.
That's really neat, really neat. So we're here at Microsoft Ignite, and you've said a lot of words that we've heard about all week, containers, Kubernetes, Docker. And I think what I want to talk about is what's the new stuff that's been announced this week? So what's new in containers? I guess if I have to shorten the question down to a single sentence. So what's new in containers at Microsoft right now?
Yeah, so the big thing for my team is Windows Server 2019 GA.
Yep.
So that brings together all of the work we've done over the last couple semi-annual channel releases into one LTSC. So all the work we've done around networking and storage enhancements, better density, smaller container images,
Right.
all of that is now available in Server 2019 as an LTSC. That's also the release that we're going to have Kubernetes support in. So we've been working really hard with the open source community on bringing Kubernetes to Windows Server. And so we've got all the platform work done in Server 2019. We've got a little bit more open source work to finish up. And we're looking towards probably 1.13 later this year. It's kind of the expected release of GA Kubernetes on top of Windows Server.
Nice, that's exciting stuff because, I feel like people they've kind of wrapped their heads around the concept of a container, what it can do. I think there's still some questions around use case, but I see that's starting to become less murky for people. The next thing is orchestration, right?
Yep.
That's kind of where Kubernetes comes in. So it's really nice to see it come to Windows Server. Can you kind of talk about... Can you kind of talk about, was it difficult to bring Kubernetes to Windows Server? You guys are still actively working on it, but was it difficult? Were there a lot of problems to deal with?
I wouldn't say there was a lot of problems. It was a lot of the same kind of work we had to do around Docker. So how do we map some of the Linux concepts to Windows? Probably the biggest challenge is that it's an active project. It's fast moving.
Right.
And so there's not kind of one thing where you can say, oh, if we just add X and Y, we'll be done. Well, while you're doing that, they add Z, and you've got to go add Z now too. And so there's a little bit of kind of keeping up with the workflow around it. And so a lot of the work we had to do was around stuff like networking primitives and different ways to think about storage and kind of mapping some of the concepts around it. It's been actually a really good experience in a lot of ways. We've brought a lot of good technology to Windows as we've done it. And so, each time we do it, it's a little easier. We learn a little bit more about it.
Right. Yeah, lots of changing, a lot of great new technologies to play with. So, the folks that I usually talk to they're mainly operations centric. They're the IT pros. They're in the trenches. They're working with historically VMs on a regular basis. So they're starting to look at containers and what containers can do for them, and they're starting to dabble with workloads inside of containers. What would be your advice for the IT pro working with containers?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about this a little bit on our session here at Ignite. Here's the ideal workloads, and then there's kind of a middle ground, and then there's there's dragons here.
Right.
And that easy kind of get started one, typically stateless workloads,
right.
web apps, those kind of things, that's a great place to kind of cut your teeth.
Right.
And if we think about VMs, when they first started out, what did we put in VMs first? It was our test workloads. Right. It was that website that we kind of used every now and then, but wasn't actively used, but took up a lot of resources.
Right.
Containers are a lot of the same thing. It's a new abstraction, so we're building kind of new ways to manage them. So take those same kind of workloads, those ones that were, hey, yeah, we use it, once a month, right. Pretty easy. Start with those, cut your teeth on them, and then you'll start to build more and more expertise around it. It'll be easier and easier to take the next one and the next one and the next one.
Kind of the snowball gets bigger there, right? So, well, hey, one other thing I want to talk to you about, I saw, this probably was a little while back. So historically we've had Nano Server and Server Core as container images, which you guys have done amazing work making those a lot smaller, a lot more usable for containers. We have a third container image now, and it's just Windows, correct?
Windows.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we had feedback from customers over, really since we started, that Server Core was great, but it didn't have some APIs. There were some workloads that they wanted to run in it. Initially, those were like, hey, we want to run our GUI in it. And we kind of got over the hump without that and said, hey, server containers are really for a different use case, and worked through that. But there were still some, like the things that did web apps that would draw or do GDI or DirectX that didn't have support in Server Core. So we introduced the new Windows container image as a way to address that and provide that new app compat. And so we've got some fairly large customers who are starting to tinker with it, building some pretty cool experiences for their cloud services using that image.
Yeah, it's exciting. Lots of exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing your session later this week. And I want to say thanks for taking the time to talk to us today. It's
Absolutely.
Always great having you on, so appreciate it.
Definitely.
So one other thing I want to wrap up with real quick. If people are looking for more information on containers, where can they find it?
Certainly on our documentation, aka.ms/containers. We're going to be launching some new marketing pages fairly soon. We'll have some details on it. Follow me on Twitter, TaylorB_MSFT. I try to tweet out new announcements, new things that are coming out. All great resources.
Sounds good. Well, thanks again, Taylor. And thanks again for watching. As you can see, we're at Microsoft Ignite, really busy here today. And be sure to check out our other videos that are coming at you. Thanks for watching.